Crafty Meraki fans. My name is Deepa from Designs by D, and today I'm going to be showing you how to stamp out cute critters on Slimline cards in order to help you fill up the space that you have. I don't know about you, but when Slimline cards first came out, I used to think that there's so much space on them. How can I fill them? So that's what this video is about, showing you how to build your scene using the space you have. Now I'm going to be using this stamp set here, which is called True Champion. I've got not only the stamp set, but the coordinating dies. I'm really just going to focus on the stamp set. I will use one of the dies. And then I'm also going to be using the canopy leaf die set here. So let's first of all cut our card panel. This is 4 inches by 7 inches, and the typical size of a slimline card is 4 inches by about 8 or 8.5. This is not going to be a mini slimline because that's usually 6 inches or less, but it's going to be in between a full slimline and a mini slimline. So it's a custom slimline card that is 4 inches by 7 inches. I'm going to go ahead and stamp out these little monkeys here. Now, the way that I'm building my scene is I want to fill up the full length of that slimline. So you could choose to do a scene in a landscape fashion, so you have them kind of sitting on the ground or something like that. But since these guys, I can see a couple of them are hanging from vines, I thought that they would work perfectly on a slimline card. So that's what I'm going for here. So I've taken one of those cute little monkeys and he's kind of hanging from his tail. I figured he'd be good at the top, and then I'll kind of continue this kind of hanging monkeys theme. Just kind of like, a barrel of monkeys. You know that kid's toy where you can kind of hang the monkeys one arm to the next? That was my sort of inspiration for this. So I thought, okay, I could have that one monkey in the middle hanging from his tail. Then I have the next one from the vine. And you can see I've kind of attached the vine right to the very end of that banana. So it kind of looks like it's coming out from behind it and could continue behind there. And then the last little monkey, I'm just having him sitting on the bottom there. Now I'm not actually going to color in any type of background in terms of like having a sky or the ground or anything like that. I just really want these monkeys to be the focal point for this card. Now you can see I'm also stamping out one of the palm trees there on the right. Now this card, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes when I'm making cards, it kind of comes together as you go along. So I have a bit of a plan, but that changes as I go along. So I initially had wanted these 3 monkeys to be the main center portion of the card, but then I added this palm tree there just because, I don't know, I felt like I wanted to add something extra. You can see I'm looking at the stamp set and thinking, is there anything else I can add? I end up grabbing the banana here, and I'm going to stamp out a few more bananas on a separate piece of cardstock, and this will be the one die that I use to cut out these pieces. Otherwise, the rest of the stamping is just plain on the cardstock. I'm not going to do any die cutting of those images. So anyways, what I meant was that I added that palm tree there, and you can see it kind of pushes the center. It's like the image is not centered anymore, right? It's kind of off to the side. Now, that wasn't done intentionally. It ended up working out that way. And in the end, I placed my sentiment there in that space and it just worked out perfectly. So sometimes cards come together as you put them together, right? So that's my whole point in that spiel. Now I'm going to be doing a lot of Copic coloring here. So if you are not into watching coloring, that's completely fine. What I do recommend is if that's the case, skip forward to about 7 minutes and you can see more of the card coming together versus just watching coloring. Now, the reason why I say this is my coloring, it's nothing special here at all. You'll notice that before I use each set of colors that I'm using, I'll have a screenshot there that kind of shows you the colors that I'm using in case you're interested. These are Copic colors. I'm using a mix of Copic Chows and the standard Copics. And it really is up to you what you want to do. As you can see, I'm going with something unconventional. I'm going to do some pink monkeys here. And the reason for that is in all my card making, I kind of use the rule of 3. And it's partly because I have 3 daughters. So rule of 3 looks good because it's an odd number. Second of all, I have my 3 daughters. I call them monkeys and they're all girls. So I thought, why not make these monkeys pink? I'm always the type of person who kind of likes to think outside of the box. I'm not always going to stick to what the conventional thing is to do, and I'm always going to try and do something different. And in doing so, I hope that this also sparks your creativity and maybe inspires you in some way. So I'm coloring in my pink monkeys. The main portion of the monkey is pink, and then of course the face and the ears and the hands are going to be like a beigeish brown. For the palm tree, I'm sticking with the pink theme. So the palm tree is actually going to be pink leaves rather than using green, and I'll use the brown bark. And then also the vines, the little leaves on the vines are going to be pink as well. Everything on this card is just going to be pink and gold and really cute. Now, if you wanted to stick with the unconventional theme like I am, but make this a little more masculine, you can choose to go with blue monkeys, green monkeys. It's completely up to you. Do whatever you want. I always find that when I'm coloring, you tend to stick to what you normally find. And I was so tempted to make those leaves green, but I'm like, no, I'm going to go with the pink as I'm doing for the rest of the card. Now, as I mentioned, there's nothing too complicated in my coloring. I've just mainly picked either 2 tones of the same color or 3 tones of the same color. On the banana, I do use a yellow and like a beigeish brown. And that just, it really deepens the yellow a bit because I don't have a deep enough yellow. And all I'm doing is adding my darker color, my mid-tone, then my lightest color to blend it all out, and then maybe go back in with my darker color. It's completely up to you in which order you color, from lightest to dark, darkest to light. But if you are going dark to light, I do recommend going back over with your darkest color just to kind of define some of those lines. So I've colored in my monkeys and the vines and the palm tree, and now I'm going in to color those bananas. So as I mentioned, I use the yellow and like a bit of a brownish color, which tends to go really nicely. And then my final trick for coloring cartoon or little critter bits in like this is to use a white jelly roll pen. And what the white jelly roll pen does is it just creates like little highlights. So I just draw lines and little dots to kind of create a bit of interest on the card. And you'll see those little lines, they do make a huge difference, and they just add more to that cartoony type look. So as I mentioned, I'm not going to cut out the monkeys. I'm going to keep that scene as is. And then I'm just going to use the small banana die to cut out those 3 bananas that I colored in there. So I'm showing you one here. I'll cut the rest out exactly the same. And now I'm going to switch to some more die cutting, except I'm going to be using some different cardstock. So I've got 2 colors of pink, 2 shades of pink. I've got a gold glitter cardstock, and I've got a matte gold specialty cardstock. Now here's where the canopy leaves come in. So I'm actually going to cut out one of each of those cardstocks. So 4, you have the 2 pinks, the glitter, and the matte gold. And I'm going to cut out the larger canopy and the smaller canopy leaf. And I've done all of that off camera for you. It's a lot of die cutting. So these are all of the little fronds here. Now, if you do happen to have your frond kind of rip apart as you're pulling it out of the die, there's no worries at all, because what we're going to be doing is cutting off the leaves. Now, I've got my card base here. I've basically taken an 8.5 by 11 inch card stock page, and I've scored it at 3 3/4. Okay, so it's a little smaller than 4 inches. I'm going to cut this panel down. And then, the card base is actually 3 3/4 by 7 inches, it's 7 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and add some color to that background. So I was going to leave it white, but I thought it was just a little too much white. So I'm just adding a little bit of Pink Fresh Studios Ballet Slipper to the background just to soften it up a bit. Now I will attach this to the card base. And what I really wanted to do here is create a nice leafy border. So that's what all of those fronds are, those canopy leaves that we cut out. And in order to attach the border, I'm going to use some foam tape. So I've got this strip, this large roll of foam tape, and I'm just going to take those strips and line the outside so I get a frame here. And once that's complete, then all I'm going to do is remove the backing of that tape bit by bit. So I'm not going to remove everything at once. And then I'll cut off the little leaves from the canopy die cuts, and I'll add those around the edge. So this takes a little bit of time. If you want, you can cut all those leaves off ahead of time. I think that might speed up the process, but I just kind of cut as I went along. And I'm just basically layering these leaves on top of each other and forming a border around this card. And I thought that this little frame, it would just look really nice. It really would kind of draw your eye in. As you can see, the leaves are pointing inwards towards those cute pink monkeys. And I thought that it would just create a lot of interest and kind of highlight the stamped background or that scene that you created. So as I mentioned, the frame is just supplementary, but that scene that you build is the main focal point of your card, and everything else basically points towards it and is making or drawing your eye towards your focal point. So I think all in all, to put this entire frame together and add all these pieces, it took me maybe like 10 or 15 minutes. It doesn't take that long, and remember, I only really cut out about 8 fronds of those canopy leaves, and if you have a larger die cutting machine, which I do, I just don't show it on camera because it's so large, you can basically cut out 2 at a time, those dies 2 at a time, so that you're only really running it through your die cutting machine 3 times, or sorry, 4 times. So you can see I put everything together, and if you wanted, you could leave those overhanging bits, because remember, this card is slightly smaller than 4 inches by 8, so it would fit into a envelope, but I want to cut those off because I want nice straight edges. So I'm just going to put that in my guillotine cutter and cut off all the edges of those leaves. And I do want to mention that be really careful when you're cutting along that fold, because sometimes if you cut a little too close, you can cut the fold and then your card base is completely ruined because it's got a hole in it. So now that I've got that done, I'm going to go ahead and pick out my sentiment. I've grabbed this one here. It says, I can't wait to hang with you. I'm going to heat emboss this with some white embossing powder on some black cardstock. And I'm just using some embossing ink here. Again, nothing too fancy. I will heat this up and melt it to the cardstock, and then I'll cut a strip out. Okay, so this is where I was mentioning earlier that the card just kind of came together. So I'm cutting a little slant on the edge there of that sentiment strip. And you can see there's like a white space off to the right because I put that palm tree in, and then I cut this off on the edge, and I was like, oh, that kind of looks weird, but the sentiment fit in nicely, and it kind of used up that extra space, and it kind of looks like I meant to put it there all along, right? And I like using sentiments in a different way like this because it just adds more interest. And I noticed that people do notice when you don't just put the straight sentiment on there. It adds a little bit of oomph and they find it unique, right? I myself like it. So I've got those 3 bananas that I die cut. I'm just going to add them anywhere in the background here. I've got that little monkey in the center kind of holding the end of that one banana. And then the other 2 I'm just going to place in the background there with some foam adhesive. And that's my card for you today. So I showed you here how to use your stamping or creating your scene to fill your card. So because this was a portrait slimline, I made these monkeys kind of hang one along each other. If you wanted, there is another set with cupcakes. You can maybe stack them on top of each other and do some masking with your stamping. Possibilities are endless. So I hope that you've learned something here has inspired you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you have liked the video, and hit the notification bell to be notified of future videos. Everything I've used is linked within the description below, so you can always check that out if you want to. And I hope that you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you next week. Have a great day, guys. Bye.